Hello there. Ursula von der Leyen is due to spend today talking Brexit with Boris. But while the people of the UK want this over and done with, you can rest assured that there are many people out there who want to slow the process down to as glacial a pace as they can get. Firstly, as ever, please kick that YouTube algorithm up the backside by giving this video a big fat like. The new President of the EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, is visiting the UK today to have talks with the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson to set the scene for the upcoming post-Brexit Day trade negotiations. And the biggest obstacle to progress for both of them will be the length of the Brexit implementation period. The Brexit implementation period, that I will call the BRIP for short, starts as soon as we leave the EU treaties at 11 p.m. on the 31st of January. That is, as long as Parliament enacts the EU Withdrawal Agreement Bill, the EU does its part in the EU Parliament and Council, and both the EU and UK then ratify the Withdrawal Agreement Treaty before the exit day deadline. Otherwise, it's a no-deal Brexit. Quick, hide that treaty paperwork. Now, Ursula von der Leyen is a woman who likes to be in control, so she has certainly found her calling as President of the EU Commission. But she might not be quite the boon that the EU was looking for. As after checking her record when she was the German Defence Minister, I get the distinct feeling that I'd rather she was on their side than on ours. In fact, I doubt that Dominic Cummings would hire her in anyway. For one, she agreed to refurbish the German Navy's three-masted training vessel at an eventual cost of 10 times the original projection. Wonder if HS2 is looking for a new programme manager. Then there's the oft-quoted case of the German army going off on exercises on her watch, but being forced to paint broomsticks black to simulate guns, as well as using vans instead of armoured personnel carriers in training. Now there must be a robust counter-argument to all the conspiratorial chatter on the internet about Germany running Europe. But when the longest-serving member of Angela Merkel's government becomes the president of the EU Commission, one is left scratching one's head and getting the feeling one's dangly bits are being pulled, doesn't one? Now, Boris has already said that the Brexit implementation period, or BRIP, will not be extended beyond the 31st of December, so giving only 11 months for a trade deal with the EU to be sorted out. But the EU has already stated that 11 months is just not long enough and has already made noises about it being extended. Under the yet-to-be-ratified Withdrawal Agreement Treaty, the UK and EU can, before the 1st of July, agree between them to extend the BRIP once only by either 1 or 2 years, depending on progress. But Boris is pushing a clause through inside the EU Withdrawal Agreement Bill that prevents the UK government agreeing to such an extension. This has the effect of putting a no-deal Brexit on the 31st of December firmly back on the table. And this has those pro-EU types in a meltdown. All those anti-Brexiteers who, rather than accepting the result of the 2016 EU referendum, spent all their time and energy on trying to reverse Brexit. They bet their Remain farm on their ability to stop the UK leaving the EU. They lost comprehensively. And now they're staring on aghast as a government with a hefty majority and a mandate to obey the wishes of the people does what all governments with hefty majorities do. That is, use their majority to push their own agenda through. The Remainers are grown so used to controlling the agenda, it's coming as a bit of a shock when they now realise that the government does not need them and their anti-Brexit ideas and has absolutely no intention of listening to them. And that's fantastic news for Brexiteers who've had their voices ignored or worse for decades. So the only way that a BRIP extension will happen is if Boris Johnson wants a BRIP extension. Therefore, I see our PM stressing to Ursula von der Leyen today that an extension is absolutely out of the question. And the BBC reports that Number 10 said Mr Johnson was expected to tell the EU President that he is confident of getting a deal, and having waited for more than 3 years to leave the EU, both British and EU citizens expect the next phase of trade negotiations to conclude on time. While the Brexit Secretary Stephen Barclay has reiterated the warning that the UK is prepared to walk away from the BRIP without a deal at the end of the year. When people say there will be a no deal at the end of 2020, it's missing the point, he said. The withdrawal agreement safeguards many issues that people rightly were concerned about a no deal exit. But the EU's chief Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier is playing the EU citizens' rights card to try and put pressure on the UK. And this will be reinforced by the EU Parliament, where MEPs are expected to express their grave concern with regard to EU citizens' rights in the UK post-Brexit. According to The Guardian, the EU Parliament resolution about this says that without a physical document showing proof of their post-Brexit right to stay in the UK, then there is an increased risk of discrimination against them by employers and landlords. I just wonder, has the EU passed a directive or regulation to force all EU member states to provide such a document to UK citizens living and working in the EU who intend staying over there? And our opposition parties are showing themselves more than happy to step up to the plate to help apply and amplify that EU-based pressure by claiming that another Windrush-type scandal is imminent, but this time involving EU citizens. But as a Home Office spokesperson said, EU citizens are our friends, colleagues and neighbours. We recognise the enormous contribution they make to the UK and we want them to stay. We have already provided certainty to over 2 million people who have been granted status through the EU settlement scheme. Our scheme is free. There is plenty of support for applicants, and once the withdrawal agreement bill passes, EU citizens have until the end of June 2021 to apply. We have done far more than any other EU member state has done for British citizens, and it's time they adopted a similarly generous approach. What our opposition parties should be doing surely is applying pressure on the government to press the EU on UK citizens' rights by getting them to reciprocate properly. In fact, why don't they do what some of them have been doing over the last few years? Go over to Brussels, but instead of taking the EU side this time, they should be thumping on desks and demanding UK citizens get the guarantees the EU is demanding we provide for its citizens. Because a Windrush-type event is as likely to happen in the EU as it is in the UK. But our pro-EU opposition MPs would never ever dream of questioning anything the EU does. They've been brought up that way. But they'll need to learn fast, or they'll just become more unelectable as time goes on. Because I would not put it past the EU negotiators to claim that giving UK citizens post-Brexit rights will take years to organise, so they'll say that we'd all better just agree to a BRIP extension, with the obvious underlying veiled threat. And for her part, Ursula von der Leyen has been telling students today in her lecture at the London School of Economics that they shouldn't settle for what she called isolation, or the new status quo that Boris Johnson offers. Here's what she said. Brexit does not only mark the end of something, it also makes a new phase in an enduring partnership and friendship. It will be a partnership for your generation, and I count on you all to make it a success. You can choose collaboration over isolation. You can shape your continent's destiny. You can hold your governments accountable. You can refuse to be satisfied with the status quo, and you can turn things into how they should be. All I can say is that our decades of being isolated from the rest of the world within the EU are coming to an end, and that we will collaborate with those we wish to collaborate with. And as for destiny, we will be shaping our own destiny as an independent country with a true system of political accountability replacing that faux EU system. And we have refused to be satisfied with the Brussels status quo, and we've decided to turn things into how they should be by leaving the European Union. She's also said that the talks will be tough. Well, she's right there. I reckon they'll be tough for Brussels. The EU will be doing all it can to slow this whole process down, and they will be aided and abetted in this by the usual suspects once they've worked out their rejoin strategy. Yes, that's right, folks. Our so-called friends in the EU are already trying to do us over, and our patriotic rejoin campaigners are already grasping at straws by attempting to make political capital out of recent events in the Middle East. According to the soy latte guzzling tank top brigade, if we don't join Trump in some fictitious war dance, then the mega US trade deal is off. You could swear these people would rather offer a foot massage to the four horsemen of the apocalypse than see us leave the EU, wouldn't you? Let's be honest. These moves by the EU, led by Ursula von der Leyen, to try and force the UK into further entanglement with the EU are as predictable as a plotline from Scooby-Doo. And, other than Monica Lewinsky's dress, who on earth can honestly say they didn't see that one coming? Now, if you want to see more of me, there's a link in the descriptions box below to some merchandise. And if you want to hear more from me, please don't forget to subscribe and also press that little bell or you won't get notifications. Anyway, what do you think about the upcoming Brexit talks? Please share and comment, and thank you for watching.